What you're about to experience is one man's quest to see beyond the tumultuous period we're in and to envision what lies just beyond our grasp, yet well within our reach. Welcome to Larry Rifkin's America Trends, where the future has arrived, and it's just in time.
Welcome back to AmericaTrendsPodcast.com. I'm Larry Rifkin, and my colleague is with me. He's always here, thank goodness.
Yeah, how you doing?
John Krofsik. I'm good. How are you?
Good.
But I've got the wintertime blues.
Well, not
12-bar wintertime blues.
Not to worry. The good weather is on the way.
Well, when it starts getting better, you start thinking even about vacation time and getting away, kicking back.
I've been thinking about that. Yeah.
But actually, I think we've got it backward. We should have been thinking about that during the winter. We wanted to get away then. Now we can enjoy beauty and fun anywhere in our backyard. I mean, let's be honest.
What's wrong with us?
I don't know. We've got it all backward. But in order to shake off the wintertime blues, John and I have developed something really, really special for you, honest to goodness. And we're talking about 6 parts. We have never done this before, John.
No, not a segment like this.
No. We've only done individual segments on different topics. Some are related. But this is really something that we actually constructed as if we had intent. I mean, we really meant to do it, not accidentally.
I see.
Yeah, it wasn't just the way we normally dive into things. So we decided we wanted to do a series for you. And we thought that looking at trends in travel would be really, really interesting at this time of year. And, John, I really do this. And I do love our public relations professionals out there who work with us when we get an author and others. They're really helpful to everything we do. But in this case, there was a woman, I was almost stymied in trying to figure out how we were going to put all of this together. And then came along Anitra Hamper, the communications manager for a group called the Society of American Travel Writers. I didn't know about them, but there's a whole society, and they've got their own association. And I said to Anitra, I really need some help in putting this together. John, she tied us together with some of the greatest writers on travel in the entire world, and I can't thank her enough.
Imagine having a nice job like that, traveling and writing about travel. It sounds nice.
No, that means you're working when you're traveling.
Well, that's true.
And you've got to take
It sounds kind of relaxing, though.
No, it's not. I'll tell you. When I was on radio, there were many other hosts who loved to host their listeners on a cruise and the like, and they would do that. And I was thinking about it. And I said on the air one day, when I thought about my callers and the people that I got to know on the other side of the microphone, and I said, look, folks, we're not going on vacation together. That's never going to happen. So get that one out of your mind. I said, if we were on a boat together, and you came up to me, Where? You know what I'm talking about. And you came up to me at breakfast and said, this is day 1 of 14 days. I said, on day 2, you'd hear a big splash in the water. And it would either be that person or another caller, or it would be me taking my chances with the sharks. So I was not going to travel that way. So when you think about all the people who are in the travel and hospitality business, I mean, it's a business. And they have to work really hard.
You're right.
Because if you lose a traveler, even one, on one of these bus tours, that's got to really throw a big damper over the whole thing.
Boy, you're not kidding.
Where'd Joe go?
Where did Larry go?
I thought you were looking after Joe. No, so they're really working hard. Well, since we now do podcasting for a living, we actually couldn't afford to go anywhere, you and I.
That's true.
So that's why we had to do this, so we got a vicarious thrill out of travel. Because we have no money, John.
We're letting other people travel for us.
We're still at 8 cents on Amazon Associates. Folks, you got to click through from our site. I mean, 8 cents. Can I get 10 cents out of all of this? Well, we said that we want to talk to really well-traveled people who've been in all kinds of places, and we really wanted to experience what's going on out there because there are many new trends in the industry, and we want to bring them all to you. For example, John, going to a place of quiet, healing, meditation. Have you ever thought about doing that?
Yeah, but I don't know if I could sit still long enough to do that.
No smartphones, no interruptions, no ESPN. I mean, think about it. What was really fascinating in one of our interviews that you're going to hear down the road, when a woman said, you really get to know people by virtue of their smile or their eyes or their solemnity. You didn't hear them speak. And what I loved was when she said, I was shocked when a woman uttered her first words. And she said, I didn't know she was British. Well, you really, you cut out all these cultural differences. Right. Nobody knows. And who cares?
And who cares? Right?
You're a human being. I'm a human being. They're a human being. Let's have a party. All of us. So,
and
anyway.
we're missing that these days. We get so many likes on the internet.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We got a lot of them, but we don't know who these people are.
Right.
And it'd be great to interact with them. But now we have turned this whole series into something that John and I have really grown to appreciate because we had some people telling us about travel to forbidden places, vintage train travel that may be your cup of tea, may not be, and certain ways of looking at eco-travel. I mean, it's really a fascinating series. And we're going to get started today, John. By the way, where was the last place you went? I mean, where did you last travel to?
Well, let me think. Oh, we went to Maine, to the state park in Maine. It alludes.
Acadia?
Arcadia, yes. That was the last place I'd been.
Really?
That was last year.
That's the only national park on the East Coast.
Yeah, it was
when
beautiful.
When did you go there? I don't recall that.
We went in the fall.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I thought you went to Niagara Falls.
Oh, that's right. Niagara Falls was the last. Arcadia was before that. You're absolutely right.
I know.
You know my list better than me.
Better than he does. Well, I'll tell you, I've had some great trips recently. Puerto Rico, which I see just went into bankruptcy. We've got to do something about Puerto Rico. We've done a lot of reporting on that, John and I. I went to Turks and Caicos, and that was a wonderful island chain. I mean, really wonderful. But, I kind of feel like we're in a Christopher Guest movie here today. I don't know if you remember the movie Waiting for Guffman.
I've heard of that movie. It was a long time ago.
Oh, it was.
Oh,
but it was the great Fred Willard. And I'll never forget, because I love the premise of these mockumentaries, where he runs a travel agency in the Midwest, and he sends people everywhere, but he himself has never left town.
Oh, that's like us.
I know, it's kind of like us. So we're launching this series just as the summer travel season is upon us. And I want you to please stay with the series until we've run it all out. And then you go away. But don't go away before that. So again, lots of adventures coming your way. And let's start with Veronica Stoddard. And she is fascinating. She used to write for USA Today, and she's going to lead us in the hottest trends in travel today. Veronica Stoddard is an award-winning travel editor and content consultant with more than 3 decades in travel publishing. Her consultancy now involves VS Content Strategies, and she's also the Chief Content Officer for Percepture, a marketing communications agency. Now, if the name is familiar to you, it's because she was USA Today's editor-in-chief for travel. Under her leadership, USA Today's travel site grew into a ComScore top 5 for travel news and information. I mean, you follow the trends in the travel industry. Is it like every other industry we're seeing today, where there are all kinds of new approaches driven by technology, by changing tastes and approach to how we're trying to live our lives in a healthier way? Are you seeing that amount of disruption, if you will, in this industry?
Yes, I would say it's just like any other industry. There are changing lifestyle habits. There are changing demographics. Certainly technology plays a role. There are new destinations coming online. So it's constantly changing and evolving and developing really new trends.
And how exciting are they to see? Because there are a lot of things that I read that you are working on or that you think really are trend-worthy that most of us have never really heard about. We're still taking the conventional vacations.
Right. So one of the hottest trends right now is what we're calling transformational travel. And that's really travel where you're taking it the next step from an experiential kind of experience where you really want to transform your life. And often it has to do with inner discovery as much as outer discovery. So you're putting yourself out of your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. You're looking to grow. You're looking to improve your life. That's a huge, huge trend right now. And I would say it's driven mostly by people who are fairly well-traveled. You know, they've done the standard locations, the standard kinds of travel, and they're looking for a new kind of experience.
Now, we did a segment that dealt with a lot of meditation and healing centers. How much is that part of the experience that you're considering to be transformational travel?
Well, definitely, and I would even call that what I call it health and wellness 3.0, because the health and wellness travel has been a growing trend for at least 20 years, you know, going off to a spa or to do a yoga vacation. But now it's sort of taking it to a new level where you really want to develop new healthy lifestyles. Hotels, for example, are getting into sleep therapy. They never used to do this before. It kind of started with Westin hotels and their heavenly bed, which is several decades old now. But now hotels are taking it to a next level. Adjustable mattresses, aromatherapy, eye pillows, you know, dawn stimulator alarm clocks.
Wait, now what's an eye pillow? You got to help us with that.
Well, I've never seen one, I've never used one, but a lot of hotels now actually have pillow menus. You can choose the exact kind of pillow that you want to sleep on from 6 or 8 different types. Because pillows are very personal and, you know, they're all about getting a good night's sleep. So the industry as a whole is really making an effort to appeal to people who have those kinds of desires.
When we look at transformational travel, I think about the old nostrum, you know, just go away and kind of forget about it all. But this transformational travel, the way you're describing it, it's not that we're trying to get away. It's that we're trying to reinvent and reinvigorate our lives when we come back. We're not going to be on this journey forever. And we're really trying to use this time away from our normal daily chores to really reconfigure our lives in many ways.
It's true. It's about challenging yourself. Sometimes it's about learning a new skill, pushing your boundaries. I would say voluntourism is a big part of this, where you go off and you volunteer your time, give back to the community that you're visiting. And in a sense, that's kind of more purpose-driven. Mm-hmm. But it's all about changing who you are, developing your inner self, learning new skills, and coming back somewhat of a changed person.
And so are many people finding that there are these opportunities? How is the travel industry making all of this possible? So rather than just a bed and a beach, how are they finding these opportunities and making them available to us? How creative are they getting in the travel industry?
Well, I would say very much so. Certainly hotels are increasingly offering these experiences maybe as a half-day trip from the hotel, or even in the hotel, for example, you can learn to cook with the chef, you know, right there on the hotel property. A lot of tour companies are offering these kinds of experiences in the kind of week-long tours that you can sign up with them. And even the cruise industry has gotten into this in terms of the kinds of land-based excursions that they offer. So there's really lots of ways to kind of plug into this if you're interested in it.
Are people trying to do this in addition to what they conventionally do, which is just to kind of relax and take it easy and water sports and the like? So is there a lot of combining of moments that are really pushing forward of what your purpose is and other times where you're just kicking back? Is there a lot of that symmetry between those two things?
Absolutely. So you may want to go off and do, a lifetime visit of India, and you certainly want to see all the sites, the classic sites that are there to be seen. But at the same time, you might want to spend a day helping to build a new school in a village somewhere. So take one day out of your week or your 10 days and do something that's different, that would be not a traditional travel experience that you would have had maybe 20 years ago. So you can combine both for sure. And even if you're taking a beach vacation, you can combine both of them as well. Sometimes you might be helping scientists count the sea turtles that come to nest on shore. Spend a day or an afternoon doing that, and then the next day you're just lounging on the beach.
Would this be in that form that we call, and we have focused a bit of time on, eco-travel, or is that a totally different category?
No, I think there's a lot of overlap. So eco-travel is typically thought of as you going off and having an environmentally conscious vacation, typically maybe in the rainforest or in a tropical area. And so there's a lot of overlap in all of these areas for sure. You can't, most of our vacations encompass a lot of experiences. We may be seeing the sights, but we want to also pursue our own passions. And so that's a way to incorporate both.
How many people are trying to let out their inner Anthony Bourdain culinary as experiential, eating like a local? I mean, he does make it look very appealing, and you have to tell us how much we in the media have an impact on the way we encourage people to go out and find these new experiences. Is he a major influence on what's going on, perhaps, in the culinary area?
Oh, for sure he is. I mean, his show is huge. He's got enormous impact on people. And AARP did a survey and found that 50% of baby boomers want to eat a meal with a local person when they travel. I mean, that's a huge amount. So, culinary has always been strong. Eating out is certainly part of a vacation experience, but now we're taking it to the next level. We want to take cooking classes. We want to go to the markets with the chef. We want to hunt for truffles. We want to have those in-home dining experiences, maybe tour the local farms and the vineyards. All of that is huge now. And interestingly, it's a lot driven by millennials. You would think
Really?
it's the baby boomers, but 88% of millennials have taken a culinary-focused vacation. And I think a lot of this is also about bragging rights. People want to brag. They're into the food, and they want to say what they've eaten, who they've done it with, and, they sat next to Chef so-and-so on their last vacation. They can Instagram it, and they can Facebook it, and it's all about
Of course.
bragging, right?
Now, since you mentioned the millennials, how much of the trends that we're talking about, transformational travel, purpose-driven, health and wellness 3.0, are being driven by baby boomers who have more time on their hands and more disposable income as opposed to millennials who are just developing their lives? But how much of it is being driven by the older crowd versus the younger crowd?
Well, I would say it's in tandem. I would say both groups are very keen on these kinds of experiences. And one place where they come together is in another huge trend in travel, and that's multi-generational travel. So that means several generations in one family traveling together. It's an enormously growing sector of the industry. So you've got your baby boomer grandparents, you've got your millennial parents, and you've got their little kids. And again, interestingly, the millennials are very much driving a lot of where the trips take place. So the grandparents may say, we'll pay for it. You plan it, and we'll come along.
Now, how difficult is that to do for the travel industry? Because obviously, if you've got a child who's 10, and then you've got a millennial who's 30, and then you've got someone who really can't keep up the pace necessarily at 75 or 80. I mean, how much do they really have to work to really define an experience that works for all of them?
Well, that's a good question. For example, cruising is a perfect vacation for this kind of multi-generational travel.
Now, what type of cruising are we talking about here?
So it could be anything from a Disney cruise or a Royal Caribbean cruise, which have a lot of family amenities on board. And the brilliant thing about those is that they often have daycare facilities for very small children and play areas for sort of the in-between kids. And then there's enough to do for the parents and grandparents so that everybody's happy. Everybody has something to do that, pleases them. And they come together at the end of the day and share their experiences. I've done that. I've done a multi-generational cruise with my family, and it's a fantastic way to travel.
How long are trips these days? I mean, generally, how long do people like to get away? Are they looking for the shorter duration just to get away from it all, or are they looking to really go away for 2 and 3 weeks? Is there any change in the duration?
I would say not really. Americans have never really taken very long vacations.
We don't even take what we're entitled to.
Exactly. So long weekends are always big, especially if they're driving vacations, which, by the way, most vacations are driving vacations. And then sometimes you'll have people go away for a week, maybe 10 days. But 2 weeks and up is just very rare for Americans.
Well, just about everything that we read about has somebody cruising on the river or on the ocean or flying to an exotic place. But you say, as you just did, that we're still really about the road trip.
Exactly. That's the majority of the way Americans vacation, and it's often tied to visiting family and friends for holidays and that sort of thing. At the end of the day, vacations are expensive, so it's not really surprising that the majority of them are driving trips because they're less costly, right?
And, I mean, they're less constricting in terms of what you can bring and all of the limitations and the regulations. Right. Are people a little bit fed up with some of that?
Well, certainly air travel hasn't been very fun for the last many years now, and so I think having your own car and being master of the road is an alternative to, being hauled off a plane forcibly, right?
Right. Now, what are people doing when they are taking a car trip? Are they taking it so they can get to one destination or multiple destinations? I know my wife and I took a great trip to Arizona, and we rented cars, and we had an urban experience in Phoenix, and we had an experience in the desert in Sedona, and we did a lot of things in between, and we loved it.
Well, national parks is a huge destination for road trips, of course, and so you might have one, park in mind that you go and you spend several days at. But sometimes it's a longer, you might drive up and down the California coast, for example. It just depends. I think every kind of road trip is popular with Americans.
Now, you also point to river cruising. Now, how does this differ from the typical big boats and the ocean cruising that we often think about when we think about a cruise?
Yeah, so river cruising is a subsector that's really exploding right now. And the idea is that they're much smaller boats, for one thing. They're much more intimate. They're much more personalized. And I think this has been driven largely by the baby boomers because it's an easier way to travel, especially on the great rivers of Europe, right? If you think about it, all the great cities of Europe were built on rivers. So it's a wonderful way to see all those iconic capitals. But increasingly, the industry is trying to attract millennials as well. So one of the river cruise companies called Uniworld just started a whole line called U specifically to appeal to millennials. I personally think river cruising is a wonderful way to go, especially for a destination that may be a little bit challenging, where you wouldn't be able to do it on your own or you don't want to do it in a bus. So I've just come back from a river cruise on the Mekong River in Cambodia and Vietnam.
We talked to another gentleman who did that. I call that forbidden place travel, or faraway travel. What do you look upon an experience like that when an area has just been opened up and you're curious about it?
Well, that's it, and it's a wonderful way to do it because you feel safe. You've got wonderful excursions every day that are organized by the cruise line. If you're a little bit unsure about how to manage that destination on your own, they take care of everything for you. And, for some of the countries that are a little bit more challenging, this is a great way to go, especially to give you an introduction to a new place. Lots of exotic rivers are opening up. The Irrawaddy in Myanmar, for example, the Mekong River. You can sail down the Yangtze. You can go, obviously in the Amazon. So I think it's a fabulous way to travel.
And you talked earlier about people looking for the opportunity to interact more with the locals, to really understand rather than just from a tourism guide or, from some communication with each other, what really is going on the ground. These river cruises, do they allow you that opportunity to get off and really interact with people in their homes?
Oh, yeah, definitely. In fact, I took a cooking class in Cambodia on this cruise and learned how to make local Cambodian dishes, which was really, really fun. They had us on tours to visit some of the pagodas and monasteries where we could actually interview the monks and the nuns and the novices and learn about their lives and, what drove them to join these religious orders. So it gives you an opportunity to really penetrate more deeply into the local culture and lifestyle, which I think is the best part of travel.
Veronica Stoddart is with us, and she has taken us through transformational travel, purpose-driven travel, culinary as experiential, multi-generational, a whole range of things. We still have some more trends to get to. One you call velvet rope travel. What is that?
Yeah, that's kind of a funny name for it, but it's really about getting special access, sort of insider access to whatever the experience is.
Everybody loves to think they're seeing something that no one else has any access to.
So American Express did a travel survey, and they found that 81% of people valued having a personalized experience over anything else in their travel itineraries. So anything that's kind of one-of-a-kind curated that only you got, again, it's about bragging rights, right? You can come home and tell your friends you did this coolest thing that no one else has done.
Or you can send endless pictures to really anesthetize the rest of us while you're still on the trip.
Well, exactly. And with social media, you know,
absolutely.
you can share it instantly.
Well, you tell us that Waldorf Astoria, that group of hotels, they have recently introduced something called Unforgettable Experiences. What do they do?
And so that's exactly this kind of thing. They develop experiences in the locations where they are. They tend to be big cities, of course, but it could be a cooking experience with a chef, or it could be eating with someone in their home. So again, these kinds of one-of-a-kind experiences that you wouldn't be able to put together on your own. That's really what they're trying to offer.
Now, as much as we talked about forbidden places or places that have just become part of the tourism experience, how is Cuba entering into this realm today? Are people really excited about going to a place like Cuba?
Oh, for sure. I mean, there are a handful of exotic destinations that are just opening up to the wider world, and Cuba's certainly leading on that score. Another one I would say is Myanmar. And these tend to be destinations for people who are much more well-traveled. I wouldn't say a person who's never been out of the country would tend to go there, but someone who's already been to Europe, perhaps, and looking for something new and novel.
And how different is that experience? Because these are not places like St. Martin or Turks and Caicos that is there and derives most of its income from tourism and has an entire itinerary set for you. You really have to go find it yourself to some extent.
Well, in Cuba, you still have to go with an organized program, so you really are not supposed to go on your own.
But some people seem to.
They do, and that's kind of skirting the rules. Mm-hmm. So the idea is you really are supposed to go with an organized tour group, and they would set out the itinerary for you depending on what your interests are, which, you know, in a place like Cuba actually helps if you've never been before and if you don't speak the language. And in a place like Myanmar, which is really just now sort of opening up to the outside world, the infrastructure is still pretty undeveloped. And so these would be much more adventuresome kind of places for people who are really well-traveled, I would say.
At the same time, you also remind us that while certain people are looking to find these kinds of places, others are looking for what you are terming safe haven travel.
Yes, absolutely. As you know, the world is not always a safe place. There's a lot of areas in turmoil right now. And Americans tend to be a little bit nervous travelers, I would say, compared to, say, Europeans or Australians.
And why is that? Why is that, Veronica? Really?
You know why? I think because they don't travel out of the country very much. Mm-hmm. You know, other parts of the world you find people traveling. Certainly in Europe, you know, the country next door is not that far away, right? In the United States, we have a large landmass here, and Americans don't travel abroad as much as elsewhere.
What percentage of Americans even have a passport?
It's about 35%.
That's
now.
it?
Yes.
Wow, that is amazing.
So that tells you right there. That's why I think they're a little bit nervous travelers.
Yeah, that's interesting because we're so individualistic in every other sense, and we want to go and find America on our own, as you say, with our road trips when it comes to going somewhere that's a little more exotic. What about the concerns about tourism in the United States right now as a trend? Travel ban seen as a risk to tourism, that we're not as inviting as we might otherwise have been in times gone by?
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely. They're predicting a drop-off of about 4.3 million fewer visitors this year to the United States.
What does that mean to us?
Which represents a loss of about $7.4 billion in revenue. And this is all since the travel ban that President Trump tried to enact. people just don't feel like we're welcoming, like we really want them to come and visit. And this goes for Europeans, for Britons, from people, not just those countries that are having trouble getting into the country now, but even from countries that are our allies, our friends. They also feel put off by coming to America. So it's a sad thing to see. A subset of this is that people who have a different lifestyle, for example, gay people from overseas don't feel comfortable coming here now, too. I've been reading about that. It's just, it's having a huge impact.
Well, even before this, as Americans, I think we would have a difficult time, maybe not, because we travel, so we're tourists in our own land. But are we generally, as opposed to, say, European countries and Asian countries, are we an inviting place to come to otherwise? In other words, do we make it easy for someone to find all the riches in America, or do we make it difficult?
I think we are by nature a very welcoming people, a very warm and hospitable people, and I think that the statistics prove that out. When people come here to travel, they leave with a very good impression of America.
They do.
So they do, yeah, and so this is something that's just kind of new and sudden to have this sense of we don't have to welcome that out anymore.
Veronica, a couple more things that I'd like to get into. Solo female trips. You say that women are going alone more than they have in the past.
Yes, and I would say this is partly driven by baby boomer women who for some reason find themselves alone. Maybe they've been widowed, maybe they're divorced. They still want to travel. They may not have a full-time companion to travel with, so they're just going off on their own. They say that the average adventure traveler is not what you would expect, a 28-year-old male, but rather a 47-year-old female, which is really counterintuitive.
Are we talking about safari? What are we talking about?
All kinds of things. It could be, the tour groups that you can sign up for, adventure tours. It could be cruising. I think river cruising in particular is a great option for single women because it makes them feel safe, it's sociable, they've got people to spend time with and to eat meals with. And, some of the sectors of the industry are catering to this. Air India now has women-only rows on their planes. Hotels have had women-only floors for a number of years. There's been a 230% rise in women-only travel companies. So this is really a big untapped sector that is just now coming online, I would say.
And you mentioned before, if there are those who are gay and they're traveling, there are many opportunities that are very, specific to that group of individuals?
For sure. I mean, and there are certainly tour companies that cater to them. In fact, practically any specialty you can think of, there are tour companies that cater to those niches. People with pets, for example. And almost any kind of demographic group you can think of. So travel in that sense is becoming more and more specialized because there's always going to be a company that's going to cater to the needs of someone who wants to travel in a particular way.
What about our movement away from hotels into the Airbnb situations? How much are we trying to find our own way and getting out of the traditional, conventional 30-story high hotels?
Well, certainly Airbnb has just exploded on the scene, as we all know, and increasingly people are looking to that option instead of a hotel. Partly it's because they want a more local experience. Having that local experience has high value. Living like the locals, living in their neighborhoods, eating their food, coming back with an experience that's really different from what you might get in a hotel. And even hostels are changing. I mean, it's hard to think of the hostels that we knew back in the day, right? Now they're becoming more posh. They have more amenities. And they're still inexpensive, like an Airbnb, but they have more style and more privacy. So all of those alternative kinds of accommodations are definitely growing. And I would say another one in that are vacation homes. So instead of staying in a hotel, you can rent an entire home.
Oh, absolutely. That's, of course, gone along the shoreline for so many years on the East Coast and West Coast. You have some new terms for travel. We'll quickly go through these. Poshtels. What are poshtels?
I was just talking about that. Those are the hostels that are becoming more posh. So our industry has a tendency to coin new phrases, which I sometimes think are pretty funny. They mash up words. So in this case, a poshtel is a mashup of posh hotels. Hotels that are a little bit more stylish, have more amenities, but are still inexpensive like you would expect a hostel to be.
Along the same lines, luxpiration.
Yes, and that's adventure travel, so exploration, but with a luxury edge. So they've mashed up luxury and exploration. And I'd say that's a huge trend because people love doing adventuresome things, but at the end of the day, they want to have a nice hotel to come back to. They don't want to necessarily camp out at night. They want to be pampered with a nice meal and maybe massage when they've been hiking all day. So that's a way of combining those two things in one.
Dronications?
Yeah, this is a strange one. It's using drones to shoot photos so that go beyond anything that you can do on your own. So again, you're always about taking those beautiful photos that you can share on social media and let the world know what you're doing. And this is just pushing it to the next level.
Well, there you are on the zip line with your smartphone. What about adventure moons?
So adventure moons. We've had baby moons where people go off. That's sort of the old thing, is the going off and celebrating the birth of your baby before they're born. We call those baby moons. And now we've got adventure moons, which is taking a honeymoon that is adventurous. So an active, adventurous vacation on your honeymoon.
Well, the whole journey when you think about marriages. So you might as well start off on that foot. What about these?
I've got one more to add to the list.
Of course.
And I just was reading about this week. It's called a beercation.
A beercation.
So it is craft beer tours, beer-oriented travel. So there are more beer drinkers in the U.S. than any other drink. And there are all these craft breweries that have sprung up all over the country. And so now there are people who actually are planning their vacations.
But why would I think that there are many other people who are finding these wine tours the most compelling thing? Where does beer fall in with wine?
Well, there are more beer drinkers than wine drinkers. So, but certainly wine tourism has been huge for a long time, and there are wineries all over the country in places that most people don't even know about. They think of California and Napa and Sonoma, but Virginia has a thriving wine industry. New York does as well. Lots of states do, and they're certainly developing their wine tourism business because there's great demand for that.
The whole idea of medical tourism, where people are going to get procedures and then taking the time in that country to explore, how important a segment is that?
You know, it's a small segment. I wouldn't say it's huge, but it's growing and in some unusual ways. I know when I was at USA Today, we did a story on dental tourism to Hungary, of all places. They had Western-trained doctors there, and there were towns that specialized in doing just dental procedures for people who come in from out of country. And the driving force there is that it's so much less expensive because dental costs in the U.S. are quite high.
Well, we all may be driven out of the country soon to look for our medical care. Let me ask you about Utah and the strategy that they're using. And if you want to talk about any states, I mean, clearly I can always remember the I Love New York campaign and say that that was one of the few tourism campaigns that really got to me emotionally. Now I see where Utah is focusing on their 5 national parks. That seems like a very smart strategy, because I think when we think of national parks, many of us think of Colorado or we think of other places, but we don't necessarily think of Utah. Right.
I think that's a really smart strategy as well, because as we know, last year was the centennial of the National Park Service. So parks were very, very much on many travelers' minds, and I think that's a brilliant way for them to market themselves.
I've got to get to one other that is really, it's the out-of-the-world travel. And the idea that Elon Musk and others have that we are all going to be traveling outside of this gravitational pull. How do you look at that? Is that really a segment that you, as a travel expert, are going to pay a lot of attention to?
You know, it's still premature, I would say. We're not quite there yet. I think once it does come online, I think people are going to be lining up for it. And it's still going to be costly. I mean, this is going to be the upper tier of people who can afford that, at least in the foreseeable future. So I see that as a kind of a far-off trend. We're not quite there yet.
What about the ends of the Earth before we go to outer space, the Arctic and so forth?
Yes, polar travel is definitely exploding. More and more options to get there, more of these specialized ships, expedition ships that will take you there. It's not cheap, but it's, again, one of those once-in-a-lifetime experiences that people seem to crave.
Veronica, is there any place that you'd like to go that you've never been?
Many, many places. I've traveled widely, but there's so many places I'd still like to see that I haven't been to. Top of my list would be Tibet. I'd love to do the Silk Route through the stands. I like to do adventuresome types of travel that are a little bit more off the beaten track, as you can see. So lots of places still left on my bucket list.
All right. Well, by the way, the best beaches of the world, has that been changing over the last few years? And can you tell us where those best beaches are?
I would say they're still the same. Hawaii has them. The Caribbean is loaded with best beaches. The South Pacific, I'd say those three areas would top the list in terms of what we think of as a classic, beautiful, soft, white sand beach. Some of those destinations are getting a bit overdeveloped, so there's always the hunt for the new one that's not quite as developed, where you can find a more secluded beach. But typically, those are the three areas for best beaches of the world.
Veronica Stoddart, I can't thank you enough. You've really given us a panoramic view of the travel industry and what the future holds for all of us who are packing up and getting ready to go. Really, really interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
If you like this episode, please leave us a kind rating or review. I'm on my hands and knees. Please do it on iTunes, because your review is really critical for us to continue providing this podcast. And John, I know that iTunes looks at this. They want to make certain that we have some ranking, some visibility, and that we're getting some traffic, and then they give you better positioning.
Absolutely. And this way it'll put us in the forefront so you can find us much easier on your iPhone or Android, whatever you may be using.
And they may even send you out an alert. So please, if you can, don't miss a single episode of America Trends Podcast. And, John, they can subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher.com.
And also subscribe on our website.
Oh, absolutely.
We send out a little blurb, and we can also take your emails there at newsletter@rifkinradio.com. That's another way to get us.
And we do not sell or share our list.
Nothing.
Well, I don't know. Does anybody want our list? I don't know, but we don't do it.
Good question.
Even if they asked us.
Even
Nobody's
if they
asked us. But.
Right.
And when you do subscribe, let us know on Facebook and Twitter. We're getting very active on Facebook and Twitter. Our handle on both platforms, and John, this is really easy, @Trends Podcast. That's it.
That's real easy.
You like that? Did you get that?
I got that.
Okay.
I'm going to have to check it out now. I'm going to have to twit it.
We want to thank you, of course, personally for subscribing. And we also would like to get some of your ideas and questions for future episodes of America Trends Podcast. And that's important, too, because we're all over the map. Our interest editorially in the future, John, has no bounds. But we want to know what it is that you'd like to hear from us. If there was a segment that you'd like to see us follow up on, or if there's something in depth that you'd like us to deal with, please let us know that, too.
We're looking at the future. There's so much we can look at.
Yeah, and the topics that we've dealt with, I mean, we have gotten such incredible guests over the recent period, but they're only going to come to us if they know we've got an engaged and interactive audience.
Absolutely.
So it's really important that you become part of this podcast in so many different ways that we're sharing with you today.
You're absolutely right. We need your support and your help and your reviews.
And your ideas.
And ideas.
Or questions on Facebook and Twitter. And by the way, you can direct message us @Trends Podcast or using the hashtag Trends Podcast. You can also add an email address if you have a public one that you'd like us to give out.
Yeah, good. Hey, and you know what? We didn't mention Amazon.
Oh, yes. We have an Amazon store.
Yes.
And so if you go up, you don't have to buy the things that might be highlighted at that particular time. You can buy any book, and there's some benefit that comes back to
Put
us.
what you're looking at in the little search engine block there, and it'll take you right to Amazon, and it'll help us out.
Absolutely. And it doesn't really cost you anything more because they have built that into their pricing structure. So we get a little taste and you get more programming like this and you get the item that you were looking for. So it works for all of us.
It's a win-win.
Absolutely. Win-win-win.
Win-win-win.
So for more information on America Trends and for the latest updates on upcoming episodes, be sure to like our page on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. You can find us at Trends Podcast. And again, you can find John and I here in our studio performing as best we can for you.
That's right.
And
Let us out.
What's that? They're not going to let us out. No one is. Hey, listen, thank you so much for joining us today on America Trends. We'll see you next time.
We hope to hear from you soon.
Oh, by the way, we are posting all the time. And we're posting on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Good point.
So just be aware, if you're looking for new episodes, they're coming on Tuesdays and Thursdays. When you wake up, before you go out on your jog or your walk and you want to take us with you, we'll be there for you.
Very good.
All right. Have a great day.